Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome to the long-term review of the 2011 Honda CBR 250R. Gear up and get into it. Alright, so a little bit of history about this particular bike. It's not actually mine. I actually bought this bike for my wife in 2017. So technically this is her bike. She's a beast. Alright, so the first thing that we have to start off with is to understand that this bike is a 250. So we kind of have to set our expectations appropriately. So the 2011 CBR 250 is a single cylinder and it weighs roughly 350 pounds or so. So it's a super light bike that you can easily flick around. So this bike is primarily going to be for beginner riders, someone who's just starting out or just coming onto the street from dirt. Now with that being said, this is still a capable bike. It's not going to top out at like 50 or 60 like the Grom. This thing can easily do over 80. So if you're looking into this bike for like a commuter, this thing can definitely handle the highway. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes. Right now I'm actually heading to what we know is the Frankfurt Gorge, just to show that it is pretty capable as far as handling the twisties. My wife actually did a track day with this bike, so it's even capable on the track. Granted, you're not going to be the fastest bike there, obviously. All that's beside the point. Let's talk about the actual bike. So I'm 5'9", and I'm pretty upright. The foot pegs are directly below me, so it doesn't really have a super aggressive riding position, again, which is good for beginner riders. So the clip-ons do have a little bit of a riser right here, which helps with that more upright seating position, and therefore creates a little bit more of a comfortable ride. So you can have the look of a sport bike, but still be comfortable riding as if you were riding a naked bike. So what's nice about the CBR 250 is the majority of the time when you see a small CC bike like a 250, majority of the time it's going to be like a Ninja 250. So it's nice to stick out a little bit because honestly, when you look at a Ninja 250, you know that it's a Ninja 250. You can kind of look at this bike and not really know that it's a 250 because the CBR just has that look. Now granted, if you know your bikes, you might be able to point out that it's a 250. Telltale signs like a smaller rear tire, the headlight might be a little bit different from what you're used to seeing on like a 600 or a 1000. But for your everyday Joe or Jane, it looks like a normal sport bike. So like I said in the beginning of the video, I bought this bike for my wife. So she has put on probably 99% of the miles on this bike, which is roughly like 7,500 miles. And we've had our fair share of long day rides, like well over 300 miles in a day. So again, this is a capable motorcycle, even being just a small 250. So there are a couple of complaints that personally I would have about the bike. The first of which is pretty well across the board when it comes to sport bikes. The seat on it could be a little bit more comfortable. Over the years, companies are getting better and better with making stock seats more comfortable on their motorcycles. But in 2010 or 2011, whenever this bike was manufactured, Honda didn't decide to go with the most comfortable seat that they probably could have. So the next complaint that I have about this bike are the signals. And I'm actually going to say a good thing and a bad thing about them. The good thing They're really, really bright, and it might be a little hard to tell in the video, but these things are almost blinding when you're behind them. The bad thing is they're kind of bulky. They're kind of like fat and lazy. So the next complaint that I have about the bike is the fender. Now you pretty much have to expect that when you buy a sport bike, it's gonna come with a big, bulky fender. And what a lot of people do is go ahead and get the fender eliminator kit. And it really cleans up the backside. But with this bike, the options are pretty limited as far as the fender eliminator goes. They do offer a kit for this bike, but it doesn't really eliminate the whole fender. It just takes off a small portion of it, and it really pretty much just looks the same. Honestly, that's just aesthetic and, you know, personal preference. So if the fender doesn't really bother you, then you can go ahead and just leave it right on. So another complaint that I have about this bike, and you find this on a lot of sport bikes, and I don't know why. Maybe it just cut costs, I don't know. But the foot pegs. I cannot stand rubber foot pegs. Again, this is something that could be easily fixed with the purchase of metal foot pegs with the teeth. And that's really all I have for complaints about this bike. It's a really, really solid bike. It's a great starter bike. Honda small motors are incredibly reliable. So we're gonna show you a little highway rip, just to let you know that it is capable of highway speeds. So it can easily get up to 70 miles an hour, and obviously climbing. As you can see, I'm doing, we'll get to 70 here. We're less than 7,500 RPMs. It redlines right about 10,500 RPMs. And personally, I've topped this bike out at like 85 miles an hour or so. My wife is a little bit lighter than I am, so she's actually got into the 90s with it, but you're definitely not seeing triple digits with this bike. Now with that little highway clip, I do want to just add a little bit of a footnote. If you're going at pretty considerable speeds, like 70 miles an hour, and it's a pretty windy day, you might feel like you're getting blown around a little bit. This is a pretty light bike. It's like 350 pounds or so. So you might feel a big gust of wind more on this bike than you might on a bigger, heavier bike. All right, we're gonna pull in this little parking lot because I want to show you as far as seat height is concerned. Okay, so like I said, I'm 5'10". Easily flat foot this thing. Okay, that's what I'm doing right now. And I have a fairly bent leg. My wife is 5'7". She could also flat foot this. So even if you're on a little bit of the shorter side, this bike's really not going to be too tall for you. So another thing too, and you'll find this on a lot of bikes, is how much you have to let the clutch out before it begins to engage. And this one, as you can see, it's just starting to engage right there. So you have to come out a good 1.5 inches or so before it actually starts to engage. A lot of sport bikes are like that. That can easily be fixed with some aftermarket levers, you know, like the ones that you can actually adjust. If not, it's just something that you can get used to. So I just want to reiterate that this is a beginner bike. So can you get this as your first bike and keep it? Oh, for sure you can. But even my wife, who doesn't really ride all that spirited, bought a bigger bike. So it serves the purpose. Like I said, it's capable. It can get out of its own way for the most part, but just set your expectations. Now, regardless of this bike not being fast, and I just want to say the word fast is pretty subjective, but in the world of street bikes, even being not fast, this bike is still super fun to ride. So much, in fact, that on our track day, I actually rode this for a session instead of my bike, because it's just so easy to pitch in, you know? So I was saying that this is a 250 and how it lacks the power of other sport bikes because of the smaller motor. All that really has nothing to do with the fun factor of a motorcycle. Take, for instance, I have a Honda Gram. It's 125 cc's, and it's only got like 9 horsepower. But I'll tell you what, man, I probably have more fun on that than I do on my big 1000 cc bike. Sometimes smaller bikes can just be more fun. I know it seems backwards, but take my word for it. What was I saying about a Ninja 250? That was one right there. I did want to mention the mirrors on this bike too. Sport bikes tend to be hit or miss when it comes to their mirrors and how effective they are. This bike falls on the more effective side. A lot of times you gotta like squeeze in your arms, you know, because your arms are just taking up the majority of the mirror. But this one's pretty good. I would say a good like 80% of it you can actually see behind you. Yeah, the riding position on this bike is pretty comfortable, but the seat is not. Again, that's just something else that you can buy aftermarket. But yeah, riding position, I'm not really hunched over. My arms are fairly relaxed. And like I said, the foot pegs are like right below me, so my legs aren't really in a super aggressive position either. So all except for the seat, it makes a pretty comfortable ride. As for the brakes on this bike, they're pretty effective. They do have a little bite to them. I've ridden some bikes where, even bigger bikes than this, and the brakes are just super soft. And they're not really all that confidence inspiring. But these ones are, they're pretty good. And that's really all I have to say about this bike, man. Like I said, it's been really, really solid for us. We've had no issues. It's treated us really, really well. Like I said, Honda is super, super reliable. And I would definitely recommend this bike as a first bike. Now, I haven't really ridden any other small CC bike other than my Grom, so I can't really compare it and say, you know, it's the best starter bike that you could buy, because I just don't have the data. But my wife absolutely loves this bike. She's really excited about her new bike, but she is sad to see this thing go. My wife absolutely loves this bike, but as she grew as a rider, as I'm sure you will if you're a new rider, she wanted something bigger. My wife's come a really long way on this bike. She never rode or drove anything standard before. As you know, motorcycles have a manual transmission, so she learned the clutch on this bike. She learned how to shift gears and downshift on this bike. She learned technical riding on this bike. She's been to the Tail of the Dragon multiple times on this bike. She's done a track day on this bike. It's really, really served us well. But anyway, guys, I hope that I answered any questions that you might have had. If I didn't, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comment section below. I do read every comment and every question, so if there is something that you want to know about this bike, go ahead and leave it down below and I will hit you back. I hope this video was informative enough, even being not my personal bike. So if it was, let me know below. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you for watching. Like I said, I hope it was helpful. I, of course, am John.com, and I'll see you in the next video. So for those of you that watched all the way until the end of the video, remember I mentioned that my wife bought a new motorcycle? I'll put a quick little sneak peek of what she bought, and hopefully she'll let me do a review on that too. Anyway, like I said, I'll see you in the next video. Later!